On the edge of a small village, where the dirt paths disappeared into quiet hills and the wind seemed to carry old stories through the trees, there lived an old woman named Grace. Her steps were slow, her hands trembled, and her skin was marked by many years and many sorrows. There was a time when Grace had not been alone. She had a husband once, a humble, hard-working man with whom she had shared decades of effort, simple joys, and a strong love that survived every season. But life often takes what we love most without asking, and one day death took her husband away too soon. His absence left a huge emptiness in her heart. That emptiness was softened only by the presence of the one ray of light she had left in the world, her grandson, a kind, attentive, lively young man. That boy became her refuge, her daily company, and her strength. Every morning he woke her with a smile and went ahead to light the fire so the house would not feel so cold. He helped her work the small patch of land where they grew a few vegetables. He gently looked after the few sheep they owned, animals that were not only their livelihood, but also living reminders of a simple life they had built together. For Grace, her grandson was more than family. He was her joy, her hope, and what kept her walking despite the years on her back. When she watched him working with determination, she did not only see the young man who stood beside her now. She also saw the little boy she had once raised with lullabies, advice, and prayers. With his gentle ways and deep respect, he filled the house with the warmth that only a beloved person can bring. But destiny, which sometimes seems especially hard on fragile hearts, had other plans. It happened suddenly, unfair, cruel. One morning, that young man who had been her support, her company, her last reason to feel accompanied in this world, fell terribly ill. Grace did everything she could. She stayed by his side for many nights, prepared remedies, prayed with all her strength, and held his hand, hoping God would not take him too. Yet she lost him. The death of her grandson left Grace completely defenseless before life. The house that had once echoed with his laughter became mute. The home that used to smell like fresh bread and shared work turned into a cold place where the silence was so deep it seemed to hurt. The sheep still bleated in the pen, but now they were no longer a sign of life and company. They were constant reminders that the hands that had cared for them so eagerly were gone. Grace would sit for long hours at the doorway, staring at the road as if she hoped her grandson would appear again at any moment. But the road stayed empty, and so did her soul. From then on, the old woman lived alone, her eyes lost in memories, sadness clinging to her chest like a shadow that refused to leave. It was as if time had stopped for her, as if the world kept turning, but her heart was frozen on the day her grandson died. The people in the village watched her from afar and quietly asked God to send her someone who could keep her company. At the other end of the village lived Eli, an 18-year-old young man who had been an orphan since childhood. The only family he had ever known was his grandmother, who had raised him like a son. She too had died not long ago, on the very same day that Grace's grandson passed away. He also had been left completely alone. Eli used to call his grandmother Mama because that's what she was to him. Grace's grandson had called Grace the same way. They shared the same wound without knowing it, the loss, the emptiness, and the silence of a home with no one waiting inside. Eli was a humble boy, hard-working and kind-hearted. From a very young age, he had learned to earn his own bread, and with that money, he helped his grandmother. He woke before sunrise, when the sky was barely turning pale, and walked to nearby farms to work by the day. He did whatever needed to be done, gathered firewood, took care of animals, fixed fences, helped with the harvests. He never complained. He never asked for more than what was fair. When he came back to the village, tired and covered in dust, he still found a little time to help others. If he saw a widow struggling to carry water, he would run to hold the bucket. If an old man needed firewood, Eli chopped the logs without thinking twice. With children, he was different. They gave him a bit of the joy that life had taken away. He played with them on the paths, pushed them on makeshift swings, or told them stories his grandmother had once told him. In those small moments, Eli felt there was still something good in the world, something that could hold him up when the loneliness became too heavy. But when night came and his house fell silent, reality hit him hard. He missed his grandmother's wrinkled hands preparing dinner, her voice advising him, her warm presence filling the little shack where they had lived together. He missed having someone waiting for him, someone calling his name with affection. More than simple company, Eli missed having someone he could call family. And though he tried to appear strong, loneliness followed him at every sunrise and every return home. So both of them, Grace and Eli, carried the same loss, the same loneliness, even though they lived at opposite ends of the village. Each one, in their own silent corner of the world, was trying to get used to the empty space left by the ones they had loved. Eli knew Grace's story. He had seen her grandson a few times and remembered him as a friendly boy who greeted everyone. Grace also knew who Eli was. She had watched him grow from a distance, always working, always respectful. Maybe that was why, deep inside, the young man did not feel completely like a stranger to her. One morning, moved by an impulse that came more from his heart than from his mind, Eli decided to step more directly into the old woman's life. He couldn't explain it well, but every time he saw Grace alone, bent over her tools or taking care of her sheep, something woke up inside him. It was the same protective instinct he had once felt for his grandmother. Seeing Grace stirred his memories, his tenderness, and a strange need to keep her company. And so it began. From time to time, Eli walked quietly to her small piece of land. Sometimes he helped from a distance, picking up firewood so she wouldn't have to carry heavy loads, or closing the gate of the sheep pen when she forgot. But she kept pushing him away. One day, he decided to get up early and take care of her sheep before she even came outside. When Grace woke and opened her door, she found him standing near the pen, watching the animals carefully and feeding them fresh grass he had cut. "Eli, what are you doing here? Go away!" she shouted, annoyed. Eli took a step toward her with the same gentle tone he had once used with his grandmother. "Good morning, Mama. How are you feeling today?" Grace's face tightened instantly. That word, Mama, had once filled her house with tenderness when her grandson used it. Now it hurt like a fresh wound. "Don't call me Mama, Eli. I'm not your mother. And leave my sheep alone." The young man lowered his head, not angry, not resentful. She walked toward him, her hands trembling, and pointed to the road with a harsh gesture. "Leave, boy. I don't need anyone's help. I can manage on my own." Eli took a deep breath. He had heard words like those before, in his grandmother's last days, when she pretended to be strong so he wouldn't worry. Even then, he had stayed and cared for her. Now he wanted to do the same for Grace, but she would not allow it. "Mama, I only wanted—" "Don't call me that," she cut him off sharply. "I am not your mother. Get out, Eli." The young man stepped back. He looked at her for a few seconds, as if searching in her eyes for some tiny sign inviting him to stay, but he couldn't find any. Finally, he walked away slowly, his shoulders low. Grace slammed the door. She had managed to make him leave, but something inside her seemed to leave with him too. Days went by. Even though Grace had driven him away with harsh words, Eli could not stop thinking about her. There was something about that old woman that stirred in him a deep sense of responsibility he did not fully understand. Maybe it was the way she walked, bent by age and by the weight of her losses. Maybe it was the silence around her house, a silence that was almost the same as the silence in his own when his grandmother died. Or maybe it was simply that Eli didn't know how to turn his back on someone who was alone, because he knew better than anyone how much loneliness can hurt. So one dawn, led by that stubborn kindness in his heart, he returned to Grace's place. He walked quietly, making as little noise as possible. He did not want to upset her. He just wanted to serve her somehow. This time, as he got closer, he noticed that near her little clay stove, she had only a few dry branches, far too little to even make a small cup of coffee. Without thinking twice, the young man went to the forest to gather more wood. He chose good, dry pieces that would catch fire easily. He tied them into bundles and carried them back to Grace's house, leaving them by the stove without saying a word, like someone leaving a gift and hiding so as not to disturb. That morning, when Grace woke up and went into her small kitchen to prepare coffee, she frowned when she saw a stack of firewood neatly placed in the corner. She walked over slowly, touched the logs with her trembling hand, and murmured, "I didn't have this wood. Who could have?" She did not need to think long. She knew exactly who it was. "That boy again," she whispered, mixing annoyance with something she did not want to name yet. She stepped outside and, in the distance, saw Eli's shape carrying another bundle of firewood on his shoulders. He walked with effort, but also with a simple kind of joy, as if that task itself gave meaning to his day. He came closer, smiling, and even from afar she could hear his voice. "Good morning, Mama. I brought more firewood so you don't have to go to the forest alone. I don't want you to get hurt." Grace rushed out with a deep frown and a storm in her heart. "Eli, you again," she said, raising her voice. "I've told you 1,000 times, do not call me Mama. I am not your mother." The young man stopped where he was, surprised. Even so, his eyes softened, as if her harsh words could not touch the gentleness inside him. "I only wanted to help," he said quietly. "You remind me of my grandmother, and I thought—" "Don't think," she interrupted, sharper than before. "I don't need your pity. Take your firewood if you want, but stop coming to my house." Eli lowered his head, hurt but without hatred. He nudged the dirt with the tip of his sandal while Grace breathed heavily, crushed under anger, sadness, and fear. "I'm sorry, Mama," he slipped, unable to stop the old habit, the word rising from his heart before his mind could catch it. "I told you not to call me that," she shouted, almost shaking. "Go away at once." The young man stepped back. Then he stepped back again. Finally, he dropped the bundle of firewood in the yard and walked away, carrying the weight of his sadness in his chest. Grace stayed there, watching him until his figure disappeared among the trees. When she could no longer see him, a heavy silence fell over her home. That night, Grace lay in bed and could not sleep. She stared at the ceiling of her humble house while one thought gently chased her. "That young Eli reminds me so much of my grandson." There was something in his eyes, in that clumsy but sincere way of approaching her, in that Mama she had rejected again and again, something that pulled at wounds that had never truly healed. Meanwhile, in his little shack, Eli also lay awake, thinking, "Why is Grace like that with me?" he asked himself. "I only want to protect her. She looks so much like my grandmother." Even though her rejection hurt, his kind heart kept telling him to go back, that the old woman's loneliness was bigger than her words. The next morning, Eli went back again. It didn't matter if she threw him out. It didn't matter if she scolded him. He just wanted to do what was right. That day, Grace was not at home. She had gone early into the village. Eli fed her sheep, bandaged the leg of one that was injured, gathered more wood, and left it neatly stacked near the stove. Tired, he lay down to rest on a flat rock in the shade of a tree in her yard. When Grace returned and saw him there, anger and something else, fear maybe, rose up in her chest. "This boy again. When will he leave me alone?" she thought, frowning. She went inside without making a sound, took a bucket of cold water, and tiptoed back outside. Without saying a word, she dumped the entire bucket over him. Eli jumped up, shocked, soaked from head to toe. "Grace, what are you doing? Why are you throwing water on me?" "I've told you so many times, don't call me Mama. I'm not your mother," she snapped. "Mama, I only wanted to help," he answered, his voice full of hurt. "I took care of your sheep. I brought more wood. Do you think I want to steal your sheep?" "Is that what you're after? My sheep?" she shouted, blinded by a mix of rage and pain. "Is that why you keep coming, to rob me?" "I would never do that," Eli said, sadness clear in his voice. "And don't call me Mama," Grace cried, grabbing a stick and waving it in the air as if to chase him away. "Leave this place." At that moment, a few villagers were passing by and heard the commotion. "What's going on, Grace?" they asked. "This boy is bothering me. I don't want his help," she answered quickly, hiding the real reason that Eli stirred up memories that hurt too much, especially when he called her Mama. The villagers looked at Eli. "You'd better leave her alone," they told him sternly. Eli lowered his head. "All right," he said quietly. "I won't come here ever again. I'm leaving." And he walked away without looking back. Grace shut herself in her house, still angry, but at the same time, a deep sadness pressed hard on her chest. That afternoon, Eli left his home and the village with a broken heart. Before he went, he left a letter on his bed, just in case she ever came looking for him one day. At sunrise, Grace went to check on her sheep, and they were gone. Her heart started racing. "Eli, of course," she said to herself. "Now I understand. All that coming here, all that help, he was just looking for a way to steal from me." Desperate, she went to the village leaders. "Eli has stolen my sheep," she cried. "Are you sure?" they asked, surprised. "We've known Eli since he was a child. He has never caused trouble. He is a good-hearted boy." Even so, they went to look for him to see if he had taken the animals. A neighbor told them, "Eli left yesterday, looking very sad. He didn't say where he was going." Grace went into his little house, hoping to find some sign of her sheep. Instead, on the bed, she found a folded letter. Curious, she picked it up, but did not open it at once. She slipped it into her pocket. When she arrived home, almost at nightfall, she sat in her yard while the wind moved the trees. Finally, she decided to read the letter. Inside, it said, "Dear Mama, maybe by the time you read this, I will already be far away. I don't know if we will ever see each other again. I only wanted to keep you company the way you once had someone keeping you company, your grandson. I'm sorry if I bothered you. I never wanted to hurt you. I only wanted to be near you because you remind me so much of my grandmother. She raised me with love, and every time I see you, it feels like she is still alive in your words, in your eyes, in your silence. That is why I call you Mama, not out of disrespect, but because that is how I spoke to her. I hope God blesses you and gives you someone to be with, even if that person is not me." Grace could not keep reading. Her tears fell onto the paper, blurring some of the words. She put her hand over her chest. "My God, what have I done?" she sobbed. "Why did I push him away? I was lonely too. I miss my grandson, and that young Eli, he reminded me of him. Forgive me, Lord, for being so hard with him." That night, she cried as she had not cried in years. She wept for Eli, for her grandson, for her husband, and for the long loneliness that had been her only companion. From that day on, her heart changed. But Eli was no longer there to bring firewood, no longer there to heal a sheep's leg, no longer there to say "Mama" at her door. And she missed him. Days went by. Every morning, Grace would stand at the window, hoping to see the young man's figure walking among the trees. But there was only silence. One day, the village leaders found her sheep. A farmer from another area had discovered them wandering and kept them safe. Grace got her flock back, but not her joy. Sometimes she asked around in the village, "Have any of you seen the young Eli?" No one knew anything. She even asked travelers from other lands, but got no answer. Every day she returned to her house with a heavy heart. One afternoon, she saw a man riding a horse past her field. "Excuse me, sir," she called. "Have you by any chance seen a young man about 18 years old? Brown hair, kind face? His name is Eli." The man thought for a moment. "Yes, ma'am. On my land, beyond the other villages, there is a young man like that. His name is Eli. He is a good boy." Grace felt a spark light inside her. "Could you give him a message?" she asked. "Tell him his grandmother is looking for him, that I miss him." The man promised he would. When he reached his farm, he called out, "Eli, come here, boy. Someone sent you a message. Your grandmother." "My grandmother?" Eli asked, stunned. "Sir, my grandmother died some time ago." "I don't know, son," the man said. "She just said her name is Grace." Eli fell silent. Then he smiled, a slow, emotional smile. His heart understood everything. Grace had changed her mind. Without thinking twice, he set out on the road. He walked for 2 days, through hills and paths. He arrived at dawn. The sheep were restless, and Grace woke up. When she stepped outside, she saw the silhouette of a young man milking them in the soft early light. It was Eli. She ran toward him, and when she reached him, her soul overflowed. She hugged him with a strength that came from years of emptiness. "Forgive me, Eli," she cried. "Forgive me for being so hard on you. Now I understand. You are the grandson I lost, and I don't want to lose you again." Eli looked at her with deep tenderness. "And you are the mother I lost," he answered softly. "I was only looking for someone to call family, and I found that in you." From that day on, they became family. Eli worked on the nearby farms, and every afternoon he returned to take care of Grace. She, in turn, began to smile again, thankful for the gift God had given back to her, a grandson. Eli finally found a home where his heart could rest, and together, little by little, they healed their wounds.